Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, and by the age of 10, I had to not only understand human rights, but appreciate it and realize that I had to fight for it. Because I belong to an ethnic and religious minority community. I came to the United States as an immigrant, and now, as a single mom, I am raising two beautiful girls. So I realized that sustainability of community and women's human rights is a daily duty. Not just responding to the needs of my daughters and those around me, but actually advocating for the rights. And I know that my story actually is not unique. Pretty much most of you would be able to identify with my story in some form or the other. And now, UN Women, along with Women's Intercultural Network and the Department on the Status of Women, are formalizing this concept that we have been doing daily of creating sustainable cities for women's human rights, with an emphasis towards implementing CEDAW locally. So there are 2,896 cities in the world with a population of over 150,000. There are 275 cities in the United States with a population of over 100,000. And sustainability, whether it's a city or a county or a village or a town, encompasses many facets. But I want to talk about one of these things: social inclusiveness. It is an essential component of sustainability. Social inclusion affirms the human rights of all people, regardless of their identity. Hence, trying to implement CEDAW at the local level will definitely help further women's human rights. So, when San Francisco passed CEDAW in 1998, and up to now, many great things have happened. But given that we are a group of NGOs and activists, I want to focus on what actually and who got CEDAW on the map, because that is what will inspire you to start doing the work. So I'm going to talk about a few changes, because I feel like I have been repeating myself the last 4 or 5 days, but then I see new faces, right? So after San Francisco implemented CEDAW, within the first couple of years, we increased the number of women appointed to commissions in income generating commissions. This is very important. It's one thing to have 51% of women, which we did at that time, who were appointed. But it was another thing to make sure they were in income generating departments, like the airport authority, port authority, police, fire, right? And the list goes on. There was an increase of the number of women in non-traditional employment in the city of San Francisco. There was gender-sensitive programs introduced to support girls in the juvenile justice system. The street lights go much closer now. Right? The distance between the street lights have been reduced. Right? There's a work balance survey done, and then it was implemented so that the people can have a certain quality of life. And gender was integrated into budgeting. These are significant. And these took place between the first 6 to 7 years. And during this time was a thriving task force with, I think Emily was heading that task force. Okay, that was part NGOs and part city government that came together not only to discuss but to make decisions that was best for the women of San Francisco. This is one of the most key ingredients. It is a city government and NGOs coming together, right? And the essence of our work is actually there. The sustainability of women's human rights can be captured only when a government engages its citizens to make decisions. So if I think about, how did it all happen, I have to tell you that the strategy to actually pass CEDAW at the San Francisco level, municipal level, took place between a flight from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. Okay? It was because we were returning from a very tired and boring and frustrated meeting about national ratification, right? And frankly, this idea, this strategy to localize CEDAW would have been rolled up on 3 United Airlines napkins and stored someplace, if not for 2 other organizations who came together, and collectively 3 organizations who led the effort. Western region headed by Cosette Thompson, the Women's Foundation of California headed by Patty Chang, and Wild for Human Rights that I had started. Then we were supported by 27 incredible, brilliant women who were from 20 organizations. We came together once a month for 18 months. And we had 3 questions that we asked every month. Will the work we are doing improve the quality of life of women? And how will it do that? Will what we do actually affect all women? What skills do we need in order to make the best decisions? And if we don't have it, how are we going to learn it within the next month, right? And who else need to be in that room to make the decisions with us? This is how we started our meetings. And when the list of successes that I talked about, right, about what we did within the first 6 years, came out of those meetings. It is the discussions that took place within those meetings among those NGOs that actually took ground and made real at the city level 6 or 7 years later. And that particular task force of NGOs were backed by about 60 organizations, both local, national, and international, and about 200 individuals. We, with a staff of 1.5, okay, and this incredible task force, became so popular that we had politicians calling us up to sign their name, and we actually even refused a few. Okay? That was the power of the NGO movement in San Francisco. It was completely because of those women and a few men who came together every month, figured out how to run a public hearing. We had never done that before, right? And to connect it to the CEDAW principles and articles, figure out what was lacking in our city and move forward. And we had 3 non-negotiables going in, along with, we partnered with the Department on the Status of Women, right? And we went in with and asked the city for 3 non-negotiables. If they were to implement it, we wanted these 3 things, otherwise we didn't want it. So it is really important, if you're pushing for 100 cities or whatever number it is, that women are allowed, that the NGOs are allowed to have non-negotiables. That's best for their cities. Otherwise, we wouldn't need CEDAW. Right? Our non-negotiables were that we wanted 200,000 from the city to implement CEDAW beginning the first year. We wanted a gender analysis in the allocations of funds, service delivery and employment. And we wanted a task force made up of civil society and city officials. That's what made our work possible. Right? And that, in essence, is our role, yours and my role. It is without those individuals, without that task force and the 200 women, right, we would not have CEDAW in San Francisco, and I wouldn't be here. Okay? So in essence, this can be done by any one of us. CEDAW in San Francisco is not unique. We needed the political power and the will, we needed the timing. But most importantly, it needed the type of NGOs on the ground asking the right questions from the right people at the right time. Okay? I started with my personal story. And when I do work on women's rights, and when there are tough points, I hold, in essence, my daughters. I always ask, what would their quality of life be? Because I feel that my work on women's human rights has to be larger than the self. That's why it's women's human rights, right? So I invite you to hold the people, the women that you care for and love in your heart when you start to do this work on women's human rights within your cities. Thank you.